are being changed. Instead, for export, we're all going to produce some crop that we ship out. In large parts of Asia, production is everybody produces rice, everybody produces shrimp, everybody produces something that is then sold off in massive countries. Well, when you work all that out, the industrialization and the reformation of agriculture, you take people off the countryside and they go to the city. Where else are they going to go? But the city doesn't have enough jobs. It's just the industrialization is not coordinated, it's not planned, it has its own rhythm, and the supply of labor is too big. What happens? Basically, people then are pushed into two kinds of lives in the third world. One, and by the way, this is a general problem everywhere. There's enormous overpopulation relative to the jobs that the industrialization, impressive as it is, creates. The first option they have is to go into something which becomes very famous in the third world, as many of you may have studied it. It's called, in economics, the informal sector. What is that? The informal sector in many third world countries is everybody who doesn't have a job in an enterprise which pays him or her a regular check every Friday or whatever it is. And, that's called the formal sector. I'm an employed worker, I have a job, I have a social security, or whatever the local version of that is called, I get withholding of my tax. I have what we all here mostly think of as a job. Well, there aren't enough of those, so one option for people is to go into the unregulated, uncharted, unrecorded world of the informal sector. What is that? Well, I'll give you several examples. A messenger. What? A messenger. You have it in New York too. A lot of people on bicycles with those little satchels that they run around with, even though here this is now organized in many cases as a business and run that way. But it started out by people who had no other job doing that. They are messengers. Or the famous example in Naples, the car watcher. That's when you park your car. That is in Naples, still very famous. You park your car, and immediately, wherever you leave your car, out come 14, 15 street kids, and they offer to watch your car for a price. In America, this is called the protection racket. In those countries, it's called car watching, not washing, watching. And they agree that they will stand there, a group of young men and women, watch your car. And if you're naive and you ask, well, why would I need to pay someone to watch your car? They smile, and you better be smart enough to understand that either you pay them to watch it, or it will be there when you get back. Those are choices, so better to pay them to watch it, right? There's that. And they're the ones you hear about in the newspapers, although they're not the major ones, which is everything to do with drugs, everything to do with prostitution, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of it is all kinds of informal services people provide one another. I don't mean sexual something, all kinds of to babysit one another's kids, to take care of your animals, to clean your house, and an immense array of jobs that are ad hoc little deals that people make to get by. Somebody I could call you? No. Okay. Huge. In some societies, this is the overwhelming majority of people. Large parts of South Asia, for example, this is the dominant group of people, much larger than the formal sector. And no one quite knows what these people do. No one keeps track. They really don't pay any taxes. They fall outside the realm of the formal economy, but they're very important. They, for example, buy a lot of stuff that the formal economy sells to them. They provide services that the formal economy needs, but doesn't provide for itself, like messengers, for example, and so on. And so that's a very big phenomenon. It has all kinds of effects. It changes the urban landscape. It creates, there's an amazing book by a California social scientist named Mike Davis. I don't know if some of you have heard this. World of Slums. Planet of Slums, sorry. Planet of Slums, I should have put it on the reading list. Theoretically, it's not much, the book, but it's like a catalog of city by city across the world, just describing the size, the scope, the activities, and the social impact of these vast informal sector people who live in the slums, which is where those folks live, and which are enormous in many cities, particularly in the third world. There's huge Latin America on the edges of major cities, the favelas they're called in Brazil. They're spectacular shanty towns of immense size with millions of people living in them. That's also a product of industrialization. But I said there were two things. What did the people do who can't get a job in the formal sector and can't survive in the informal sector? They leave. And they become this vast migration of third world people whose transformations of their society in the last 30 years has removed the old ways of living, agricultural particularly, but without providing them with an alternative new one. That is, they can't get a job in the formal sector. They don't want to or cannot survive in the informal sector, so their best shot is to go to the West. Go to wherever things are better.
So that's the second option?
That's the sector. The first one is the informal sector. Well, I mean, there are three options. Informal sector, migration, death. There were a lot of them. I was about to say choose the third one. I won't say choose, but experience the third one. Death rates are extraordinary. You know, death from illness, death from preventable illness, epidemics all over the world. In Africa, incidents of AIDS and all the rest of it. So pretty much.
I wanted to ask about Africa.
Right.
I'm not speaking from a lot of knowledge, but Africa, I would say, has not participated in outsourcing as much as other parts of the world. Is that true?
Yes, again, with enormous variation.
So
South Africa is a very different thing from East Africa. So it varies. Some have more, some less.
So I guess my question is, since Africa has been left behind in so many ways, does that mean that they will not be as effective?
In an ironic way, it might. The problem is what the Africans depend on is still the old kind of story, the export of raw materials and foods and so forth, and that's going to be badly hurt too. So they may not have the immediate problem of a collapse of an industrial market, but they will have the secondary effects of the collapse of the home market.
But they still have local.
They have less
agriculture.
Yes, less skewed development. That's right. And that may give them some breathing room that they wouldn't have someplace else. Yeah.
The last couple of years, that has changed tremendously. Europe is dealing with that, with the aftermath of that serious, large numbers of African communities, illegal immigrants everywhere. In Greece, Italy, France, nobody really knows how to deal with it. There is no regulation. There's serious problems within the countries.
Yeah.
And Europe doesn't know how to deal with it.
That's right.
It's a new thing.
I want to
Well,
get.
not a new thing.
Yeah, it's not a new
A
thing.
new thing with the African illegal immigration in Europe being such a huge problem.
When things were going well, you were able to absorb enough of the immigrants that there were frictions. I mean, you know, the issue of immigration has been an issue in European politics, particularly now for quite a while. All the right-wing parties in Europe, almost in every country, make an issue of that, and that's a key to the success that they've been able to have, whether it's Le Pen in France, where I know the story a little bit more, but other politicians in other parts of the world. And when you have sudden surges of immigration, the thing really flares up, which is usually a sign that it isn't the surge, but there's an underlying problem that the surge aggravates. So, for example, when Albanians started to come west into Greece and Italy, and the tremendous upset in those societies around the Albanians and hostility to Albanians, it had less to do with the particularity of the Albanians, but really the problems there, than it had to do with the fact that there's a tinderbox of upset about African, Turkish, Middle Eastern, all kinds of immigrants that are all over Europe. I know the French situation where it's African and Arabs, and the German, which the Turks play a peculiar role in German society because they've been coming for a long time, and they're heavily integrated. They're second, third generation Turkish people. They have a Turkish name, but in all other ways they're basically German. But they're Muslim, every conceivable problem that you could imagine emerging out of this confusion of the different people trying to get together. But they were absorbed. I mean, I don't want to overdo it. They were absorbed with tension. Now, as you correctly say, the space for the absorption has been lost, and now the pressure begins to build. And it builds in two ways. One, the absence of jobs makes the locals angrier and want to blame the immigrants for threatening jobs or taking jobs or holding jobs. But also, as you point out also correctly,